Josh Eddy, and Charmaine Schaefer. Today's topic is going to be all about managing your security within your Macola system. We're going to start off today. Charmaine is going to be talking about security and progression and Macola ES. A little background on Charmaine. Before joining our team, Charmaine worked with ExactDirect for nearly 13 years in a variety of support roles and really is an expert on their software applications. After Charmaine wraps up, Josh Eddy will jump in for a bit to talk about synergy security. Josh has been with our team for over 10 years now and really is a synergy guru. So we have two really just experienced experts on the line today to cover these topics. Before I hand the mic off to Charmaine and get the presentation started, I do want to cover a few logistical items. Today's presentation should run about 45 minutes, give or take, with some time at the end for Q&A. If you have questions during the presentation, feel free to use the chat feature on the webinar dashboard. I'll be monitoring that throughout the presentation. We'll make sure that we cover those at the end. And after the presentation, I will also be opening up everyone's phone lines so we can have a more open dialogue, more open Q&A. We are recording this webinar. That should be available by tomorrow afternoon for anyone who's interested, and we can also make the slide deck available to anyone who requests it. With that out of the way, we'll go ahead and let Charmaine just dive into the presentation, and we'll go ahead and get started.
Okay, the first topic we'll discuss today is progression security. So if you need to add a user, we need to go to the Progression Visual Menu Builder, and you'll find that in the System Manager module under Maintain. And in order to use the Visual Menu Builder, the workstation must have the SQL Server client tools installed. So you can connect via Visual Menu Builder, and then you can access the Add Users utility. And you just key in any username you want to add there. And next slide, please. And you can copy an existing user. So you usually want to copy a user that has more access than what you want to give the user you're creating, because it's easier to take away than to give. So you just select a user you want to copy from, and you can create that new user, and then you can also, at the same time you are creating the user, you can turn on or turn off menus or modules just by the green or red stoplight indicator. The green means that the user will have access, the red means they will not have access to that menu. And even after you've created a user, you can use this same Visual Menu Builder to go in to the user module maintenance, and you can copy menus from an existing user to another existing user if you want to make one user closer to another user. Add a menu, make them be able to see what that user sees. Is also, you can open up to the module detail when you're in Visual Menu Builder, and that way you can drill down to more of the detail in the menus instead of just assets, payables, receivables. You can go into like maintain assets, and you don't want a user to be able to add an asset, so you just turn off those menu options right here in the module detail. And again, green is yes, they have access, and red is they do not. So when you create a progression user, there are actually two MS SQL logins that are created. One is the same as the progression login ID, and it's used for access to progression. And the other one is actually that username _SQL user. And that is what is used to access the Microsoft SQL data, other objects and components like stored procedures on the Microsoft SQL Server. And the password is encrypted when you create users in Progression, and it's known only to Progression SQL and Microsoft SQL. Whenever you create a user, there's 2 roles that are required. Each user must have sysadmin and DBO rights for the _SQL users. This is required to be able to execute any stored procedures that you have running with Progression. Progression does automatically have stored procedures even if you don't add some. And the ability to create temporary tables that are used in Progression processing. And just like users, if you have modified screens, you can create a modified screen set for a user. And once you create it for one user, you can copy it to another user, so you don't have to recreate it for each user. So if you have a modified screen set, you'll see that when you go to the screen set in Screen Set Designer, you bring up that screen set and it'll list the user IDs. Macola is the default user ID, so that is the default screen set. And the other users that will be listed in the drop-down are any that you have made modified screen sets for. Now you can simply copy them to another user and they'll have that same modified screen set. And if you also add flex to a screen set, it is possible to disable any user to be able to see that flex code. Just use the Customize button from the module list and you select the VBA property. Then you just uncheck Enabled for that user. Another option in Progression is to use the Workflow Explorer, which allows you to have workflow tabs. So you can create your own shortcuts, you can create your own list of tasks that you want to do. You can do them monthly, you can do them yearly, you can create any tab you want just to have a list of what you need to do, or just create a tab with a bunch of shortcuts so you don't have to go to order entry, enter, orders, you don't have to drill down, you just click on this little shortcut and it takes you right to that menu. So this streamlines your tasks and just gives you a one-click access to that menu. So just like users and screen sets, you can copy the workflow tabs. So all you need to do is in Workflow Explorer, go to File and Export tab from the user that you're copying from, and you tell it where to place the file, and then you actually log in as the new user that you want to have access to this tab, and you just simply import and point to the same place that you exported the tab. So it's really simple. So then if you create a very handy tab or a list of daily processes or month-end processes, you can share that with other users. As far as credit card numbers in Progression, they are automatically masked now for several versions. So what you see on the screen is a bunch of X's, and then you see the last 4 digits of that credit card number. There is also an option to encrypt these credit card numbers, and that option is in AR Setup. You just check that option, and they will be masked and encrypted. Required permissions on a workstation to successfully run Progression. You need full permissions to the registry keys that are installed by Progression, Macola, and ODBC. The Progression install folders must be set for the user to have normal or full permissions. And the Macola 7INI file must have full permissions and cannot be read-only. Also on that each workstation, you must have a mapped drive for progression. The target and start-in fields for progression shortcut must use that mapped drive. Also, that mapped drive cannot use a UNC or Universal Naming Convention. So as an example, if you have a mapped drive M with a shared folder of Mac apps, and the progression install is a folder called MacSQL, you would map the M drive to your server /Mac apps, and the target field for progression would be either M/MacSQL Macola 32 exe or M/MacSQL Peewee exe for the Workflow Explorer. And the start-in would be set to M/MacSQL. Okay, now let's go on to Macola ES securities. To create a role in Macola ES, you just go to the role creation under HR Security, Security Roles, and on the Rights tab, there are menu options there, and they simply, you call it whatever role name you want when you're creating the new role, and then you simply check or uncheck each desired option on that menu. And also you have functions for every role. Go ahead to the next slide. Oh, sorry. And you have functions that you can also turn on or uncheck for each new role that you create. So there are a multitude of menu options and functions that can be turned on and turned off for each role. After you have that role created, you then assign users on the Users tab. You just click on the Add Resources and you select which resource you would like to have the roles, or which you would also give them the menus and the functions that are assigned to that role. In Macola ES, there's also field security. Several options or scenarios are available. You can set passwords so that only those users with the password have access to those fields. One of those options is allow price override. Next slide, please. It is scenario 12, and you can set it to either warn or prevent. If you set it to warn when a user is entering an order in order entry and they change the price on a line, they'll get a message saying, do you want to continue? You're changing the price. If you set it to P for prevent and they try to change the price on an order, it would actually pop up a field for them to enter the password. So the user must know that password in order to successfully change the price while doing that order. Another often used scenario is option number 28, which is view Social Security numbers. So on the vendor, if you set them to be have a Social Security number, that Social Security number is on the screen. It is encrypted, but if you can set the view Social Security number to W again for warn, which will give them a warning saying you're about to view the Social Security number, and then you can also set it to P for prevent, and again, they'll have to know that password in order to be able to successfully view that Social Security number. And this shows when you're on that vendor, if you are in the federal ID field, which is where the Social Security number is stored. If you have a federal type of Social Security number, you use the F5 function key to see that masked Social Security number, and it'll pop up if you have it set to prevent, saying you enter this password, and if they know it, they'll be able to see it. If not, they won't be able to see that Social Security number. And another commonly used scenario is for the customer credit card numbers. This is scenario number 24. And it's automatically masked on the customer financial tab. So you only see the last 4 digits of that credit card number. And most people said that to prevent, set a password. So if you are on the credit card field, you click on that F2 function key, you'll have to know the password to be able to see that credit card. So the permissions on a workstation for Macola ES are that the user must be set up with power user or local administrator rights in the Windows security. Also, there's a user ESCRWU-FCR, which is a Crystal user that must exist on each workstation in order for Crystal to run successfully. If something does happen to that user, you can manually recreate it using SQL Enterprise Management.
All right, so I guess we're at the point where I'm going to take over now, Greg.
You got it, Josh. It's all you.
All right, I just had one comment about Charmaine's great presentation. Just towards the end there, she did mention credit card security on the Macola ES side. If anybody on the call is interested in EM10 or uses EM10 to manage credit card numbers and keep them masked, it is important that you actually use the exact Macola extra fields on the Synergy customer card in order to maintain that masked credit card number. If you try and use the credit card number that appears natively on the Synergy customer card, that credit card number will not be masked and it will not be stored in the correct location inside of Macola. So if you are an EM10 user, you need to use the exact Macola fields.
And Josh,
right,
also,
so as we begin, yeah.
I was going to say, Josh, before we jump in with regards to credit cards, we could also mention that we actually have developed a credit card module that integrates with Progression, ES, EM10, that actually stores credit card data off of your servers outside of the Macola system, and it's basically recalled whenever you run a credit card. It's recalled through a token. It basically uses encryption. So that takes all the burden of protecting your customers' financial data kind of off of your shoulders and moves it onto our processing partner. So that's just another option if you want added security.
Yeah, and it's very popular right now, so absolutely give us a call, give Greg a call when we're all done, and he'll schedule some time with you and a resource about the credit card module.
Sorry to interrupt, Josh, I'll let you,
go ahead.
I said sorry to interrupt, I'll let you go ahead.
Okay, great. So I'm going to get started here on the Synergy security thing. So Charmaine spoke about Progression and Macola ES security. Synergy security really takes off from 3 main areas. I call them their roles, function rights, and security levels. We're going to be talking about each of those 3 areas now. Security levels are the most important part of your security because they allow you to be using predefined roles, which are available already outside of the system or inside the system. So those would be things like account manager, customer manager, or administrator, or you know, the basic building blocks of Synergy would be professional and enabling add-on solutions. These are general roles that appear throughout the system and are used throughout the system and allow you to assign users to those roles either at the cost center level or at the division level or at the corporate level, and we'll get into that in a moment. The other kind of security role we can have is a user-defined role. So that would be one that you actually create yourself. So if you look through the list of the canned roles, the predefined roles, and you realize, you know what, I need a role that's going to be more for a receptionist or more for someone who's actually performing daily cold calls. Any kind of roles at all that you can conceive of that would make up something like a job group or some kind of a job responsibility can be designed in as a user-defined security role with no inherent function rights. And so when we get into the next page, we're going to talk a little bit about what those function rights might be. So in this case, we've got a role definition of an absence processor. This absence processor is used in various requests, and that's where we see the request involvement. So in this case, this is a predefined role. I know that it's a predefined role because it's got one of those early number IDs. Typically, IDs over 1,000 are user-defined. Before 1,000 are going to be predefined. But anyway, this particular role has been inserted into all of these workflow requests. So we know that that's where it's being used. Perhaps the absent processor is someone that actually processes a vacation. Or maybe, someone's modified it so that the absence processor is in charge of approving a sick report. Whatever it is, you'll be able to quickly identify where this role is used on a workflow by looking at the roles definition inside of the systems setup tab and looking at the HR roles. You could also find the roles menu inside of HR, the HRM module, and choosing roles from that menu. So the roles define which requests are allowed and what the person with that role can do in the request. So you can see that the report says that the person with the division version of that role can approve it and then also process it at the very end. Whereas the submit timesheet role, that person would be doing the realize step. Okay. Roles are also very important with documents. So in this case, the marketing manager is not used in any workflow types, and actually it's not used in any document types as well, but you'd be able to see where they were. So if the person with a marketing manager were assigned to the role of approving a marketing document so that it could be used throughout the rest of Synergy, you would be able to identify where it is used here. So that way, when you are assigning a user to this role, and you can see underneath where it says policy, there says members, and it says 11, that tells us that there are 11 users inside the system that are currently assigned to that role, to that predefined role. So if John Doe was assigned to marketing manager and we wanted to know what marketing manager actually means to John, we'd be able to go to the marketing manager role and actually see that it's not attached to any requests, it's not attached to any documents. But down at the bottom, we have something called function rights. And this is where I identified the second major security tool that you have at your disposal. Function rights are built into the system and are usually assigned to predefined roles. Function rights allow you to do things that are different from your standard Synergy methodology. For example, if you had a normal user with a professional role, that person would be able to look up accounts and would be able to, read and perform actions on workflows that are assigned to them. But that person would not be able to edit an account that belonged to somebody else. That person would not be able to add their comments to a workflow or delete a workflow that they didn't have, the rights to do that with. That's specifically defined by the definition. But if you had a function right assigned to your role that you are a member of that says that you are a workflow administrator, then you would be able to do things like delete any workflow no matter what the security level is. It's sort of like a God mode, administrative mode, function right. And if you have any questions about what those function rights actually do, you can see the definitions of the function rights right there. In this case, a marketing manager has the function role called CRM 200, which allows that person to export account data from search results. Without that role, that person would not be able to have that ability to do that. Roles and in addition, users all have the ability to be attached to cost centers and divisions. So, as you know, if you've done anything with HR, you can attach a user in HR to a cost center or to a division. But what you may not realize, though, is that the roles themselves can be attached to a cost center or a division. If I assign somebody the security role that says that they are a marketing manager, and they are only at the cost center level, then that means that all of the function rights and all of the abilities that pertain to my marketing manager role will only work if that workflow or that document or that action that I'm trying to complete is occurring within that particular cost center. So if someone actually pushes out a workflow within their cost center and it's different from mine, if I have the ability to delete all workflows, but only within my cost center, I would not be able to delete that person's workflow that's outside of my cost center. In most cases, especially in situations where people are just a single division shop, that's not going to matter. So you just assign everybody else with the corporate level of version of the role. But if you have areas where you need additional security and you want to limit it by cost center or by division, you can limit the actual roles when you're assigning them so that those actions or those security levels are only pertain to people within the same cost center or division. And so we did talk about function rights, so we can gloss over that. Security levels is the third area that I want to focus on, and this is usually what people think of when they think of security level within Synergy. They don't really realize about the roles and the function rights, and I'm happy that we touched on those two areas. But security levels where you can actually work off of a 100-point scale, and this pertains to documents and requests. It also pertains to accounts and contacts. Everything within Synergy can fall on a 100-point scale of security, in that if something is of a security level of, say, 10, if you are a security level of 12, then you can view that particular object. So if a document is a security level 10 and I'm a security level 12, I can view that document no matter where it is in the system. If that document is of a security level 15 and I'm a security level 12, then I cannot see that document. And in fact, I would not even know that that document exists. If I perform any kind of search whatsoever, that document will not appear. The same is true for workflows. The same is true for accounts and contacts and even projects. All these things have their own security levels that route back to what your individual security level is in HR. There are, of course, function rights that bypass security levels. If you are a document administrator, you have the capability of looking at any document in the system regardless of what security level you are. So you'd be a security level 10. If there's a security level 97 in the system, if you have the function right for document administrator, then you'd be able to look up that particular document. So I just want to bring that full circle so you understand, again, what function rights are capable of doing and bypassing any other security that you might be identifying. There are a couple reserved security levels that are a little bit more fun. Go back one slide, please. That would be zero public. So those security levels mean that anything that is assigned to a security level of 0 can be used to be displayed on a public website. So if you have a security level document and actually publish that document in Synergy, you can link to that document if it's on an exposed Synergy port. You can link to that document to the public internet, and that way when you update that document in the future, you are actually updating your public website. So there's no sign-in necessary, there's no authentication necessary. There is a little bit of setup that you need to do to set up a virtual directory to no longer require that authentication, but that's something that Ativo can help you out with. Security level 1, it pertains to any customers that access your customer portal, presuming that they sign in and authenticate as a customer, can see that document. So it's not assigned to a particular customer, it's available for all customers. Security level 2 only adheres to partners or resellers. So again, people coming in over the reseller portal would be able to look up those particular documents, but end users or end customers would not be able to see that document. And then finally, specific customer accounts only would be a security level 3. So if ABC Manufacturing signs into their customer portal, they would be able to see a document of security level 3 that is linked to their account, but someone else that is not that particular customer would not be able to see that security level. All right, so let's move on to the next slide. So we did talk a little bit about security level 0. So, this is something that we can help you set up to allow for a public document, but natively with a basic Synergy installation, security level 0 just basically means anyone inside of the system can see that document. But if you want to make it public, you do have to create a special virtual directory to do so. and then we talked about security level 1 and 3. So this is what we want to use for the customer portal. So that takes us, I think, to our customer portal. Oh, we're on to security level documents. So we talked about how these documents can be used to have a security level to determine what they actually can do. So when you're actually using these document types, you set a security level of a certain number, you have a user with a certain number, and that's how they actually go. If you default these security levels in the document types, in that case, you don't have to take the time to individually assign security levels to each document. So we upload a document called a hosting SLA. If we don't have a default security level on, then every single document that gets uploaded must have a manual security level assigned. But if we can assume all documents of that type need to be a security level of 10, then we don't need to worry about it anymore. We just know that end users need to have a security level of 10 in order to see that document type. And this is where that would be maintained. As you can see, it's on the general tab of the document definition, and we can see where this is going. In this case, it's actually referring to the creator of the document. So you can actually use security levels to determine who actually can create the document. So there's another slide later on that will actually tell us where the security level is, who actually can be sharing it to. But the creator determines who can actually make this document. So if we don't want someone to be able to make this particular document type, we can control it there. Or you can see right below it that you can even assign security roles to the ability to create a document. And in the hierarchy of things, the security level goes first and the roles go second, but they all are controlling who can create this particular document. The same thing is true on workflows. You can assign the workflow at the request level. When you look at the definition of a request, you can decide who can create it and who can view it by the security level as well. So in your definition, once again, we can say who can create the request. In this case, it says security level internal or 10 can create the request. But we can also, just like we could with the document, limit it to a certain role. This is an example of what our customer portal currently looks like, and we were able to set this up in a couple of different ways. One, we made sure that the security on the document that designed this particular start page was a security level of 1. By doing that, we made sure that this portal would be available to anyone who correctly authenticates against our customer portal. If we assigned it as a security level of 0, technically, somebody would be able to access our public portal on a different website and be able to look at this screen and be able to look at the links and be able to analyze it. But because we set it up with a security level of 1, we're making sure that people have to authenticate before they can get here, and then they can use all the additional advanced features that we put into the page. You may notice up at the very top, we even put in an SSRS report. So there's lots of different ways you can put an SSRS report into a particular portal. Security delegation is one area I didn't include it in my 3 because actually it's something that you can only do if you have the function right for administrator. That gives you the ability to delegate and sign on as anyone. So if you do have any, you might have a question, well, what is security delegation? That is the ability to be logged in as an administrator and assume the persona of another person at your company. So if you have somebody in another office that is using that is having trouble accessing a document or having trouble using some particular function within Synergy, and you are sure as an administrator you set them up correctly, but you want to be able to be sure that you've now fixed them, rather than walk over to that person's desk and ask them to sign out and sign back in, you can perform a security delegation and sign directly in as that person in your own workstation and validate that you're able to do all the things that you wanted to be able to do. Those delegation settings can be approved by the end user as well. So if Jane down in 2 offices down wants to give John the ability to delegate for her while she's on vacation, she can go to a particular screen and add the ability for John to assume her persona with a delegation. This is not very good from an audit trail perspective, because when we look at the audit trail, and let's say Jane's been on vacation for 2 weeks, if John has had the ability to delegate in as Jane, then she would, the audit trail would say that Jane performed all the actions that actually John was performing as that person. So this is a very sensitive area. It's something that should only be available to administrators, except in some instances where the audit trail is not as necessary, and it becomes more common for one person to perform someone else's responsibilities at that level. The better way to handle that kind of a shared responsibility would not be to use delegation, but instead it would be to use security roles and make sure that different workflow or document or what have you is assigned to a group rather than an individual person. So in this case, we see the screen where on the right-hand side, we can assume the persona of a person, or if we wanted to test out our customer or reseller portals, we could assume the reseller, supplier, or customer to access those corresponding portals. On the left, we do see where it says assign. So in this case, Len is currently signed in, but if he were to add the ability for Greg to log in as Len to perform a certain task, he could click on add next to assign and give that person that ability to do so. But remember, there's a function right for an administrator that already gives everybody the ability, or gives the administrator the ability to access everyone else's profiles. So Greg,
awesome.
turn it back over to you here, and we can see if we have any Q&A.
Yeah, great. Well, thank you so much, Josh. Thank you, Charmaine. We did have a few questions that came in over chat, so I just wanted to try to go in the order that they came in as best as possible. Charmaine, we'll start off with a couple of questions that came in with regards to both progression and ES. The first question was, can I limit a user's access to certain modules within their assigned role in progression?
Say that again.
I think what they're trying to do is kind of similar how you were showing in ES, where you could assign very specific permissions for certain modules like general ledger versus accounts payable versus accounts receivable. You can get really granular with that. Is there a similar functionality in progression?
Yeah, you can go to modules, to the menu details, and give them access to sub-menus or not. Yes.
Okay, and then you also were covering field security in ES, and a similar question, is that also available in progression?
No, it's not. It's only with like the social security number and credit cards, but no.
Okay. And then another question that came up, it's actually about EM10. Are there any major differences between ES and 10 with regards to setting roles and passwords and the like?
Josh, you want to take this because of synergy involvement, or?
Josh, do we still have you?
Sorry, I was muted. Could you repeat that again?
Not a problem. The question was, are there any, or what are the major differences between ES and EM10 with regards to setting roles and passwords?
There are two different databases. So there are different security roles that are defined in the HR module of Macola ES, which are different from the security roles that I went over in this particular demonstration. But they are completely different areas. So one pertains to the back office, one pertains to the synergy screens. The conversation as far as what's the difference between EM10 and, is a much longer conversation. But where it pertains to security roles, there is no difference. There's Macola is different from synergy. You got to maintain them separately, and that's just the way it is, whether it's EM10 or whether it's a consolidated synergy and Macola ES.
Okay, Josh, since we have you, a couple of synergy questions. They want to know if they can use just the out-of-the-box security roles as user groups in synergy, and if so, are there any drawbacks to doing that?
Yeah, a lot of people choose to do that. So if you've got a smaller shop, 10 to 15 employees, and everyone knows everyone else, you can certainly say, well, there's a customer manager role. I'm going to give all the customer people the customer manager role. Or there's the marketing manager role. I'm going to give all the marketing people the marketing manager role. You can certainly do that, but you have to pay attention to those function rights, because by doing that, you're giving them a lot more control into the system than you might think on the surface. So if you give someone the customer manager role, you're also giving them the ability to edit and delete accounts that aren't even theirs, or to view accounts that are not theirs. So you need to pay close attention to what you're doing. I would recommend using the user-defined roles if security is at all important to you, and save the predefined roles for certain administrators.
Awesome. And then another question that came through, can I copy a person in one group to another, and how would they do that? How does that work?
Yeah, you can go into, if you look in the HR, I'm about to crash here, my Synergy, or my presentation's going to crash, but you can go into the HR card and perform a copy function, and that will actually bring over all the roles associated with the user as you assign them to the new user.
Awesome. That's what came over the chat. I am going to go ahead and unmute everyone's phone lines in case someone had a question they wanted to ask Charmaine or Josh directly. I just ask that if you don't have a question, self-mute your phone so we don't get overwhelmed by background noise. But at this point, we are going to go ahead and unmute everyone and open it up to a more open dialogue. Does anyone still on the line have any questions they want to ask Josh or Charmaine? It sounds like we had a pretty comprehensive presentation, and looks like we got to all the questions over the Q&A. So I guess at this point, I do want to just thank everyone for joining us. Looks like we have an old slide here. So I do want to thank everyone for attending. We do have a webinar next week that touches in a lot more detail about that credit card module that we had discussed a little bit earlier on this call. We'll be setting up the invites for that probably later on this afternoon. So if you're interested, keep your eyes peeled on your emails. Those will be going out to you shortly. We do also value your opinion. So if you have any ideas or anything for future webinars that you think would be really valuable to your organization, share them with us. Email us, info@Ativo Consulting. You can email me directly, Greg, G-R-E-G, @AtivoConsulting.com. We love to hear feedback. It's really important to us that we're tailoring these webinars to kind of our audience and what they need. So again, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. And, we could also use your help as well. You guys are all Macola users. I'm sure you work with a variety of vendors and customers, and you might know someone that might need a little bit of help getting their systems a little bit more organized. Feel free to refer them to us. Make a connection for us, and we'll see if we can help them out. And with that out of the way, again, just want to thank everyone for joining us. I really want to thank Josh and Charmaine for carving some time out of their schedule to do the presentation today. And everyone, enjoy the rest of your day and take care.
Hey,